I thought it would be a good idea to make the poster presenters' lives as challenging as possible. So what I wanted to do was give you raw material to fire at them with respect to questions about validity. First, let's begin with some different senses of what validity is. These are pulled directly out of a compilation of some dictionary definitions. So we've got something where it's sound, just in the legal or moral sense, well-founded as in a valid point, producing the desired result, a valid remedy, something authoritative, which I think all the poster presenters will kind of stand on, a valid law, and a conclusion that cannot be denied without contradiction. This is what you might call the classical semantic foundation for senses of validity. Taking, again, a classical view about the 4 C's, there's content validity, a datum or an aggregate property of data captured about a topic for which much more data could be captured. The major variants there are content validity for a test, the degree to which the items or exercises on the examination paper reflect some domain that you're interested in. And curricular, again, the alignment between that kind of exercise on the test paper and the particular opportunity that learners had to learn something. The question for the poster presenters that you might want to consider is, how does your trace reflect validity with respect to the domain and with respect to what might map onto a sense of curriculum for self-regulated learning, or the interaction of these cognitive and metacognitive processes, CAM processes, let's pick Roger's broader collection of these kind of things, with respect to self-regulated learning. Criterion, relation between the same blah blah stuff, datum and aggregate, etc., to something about a different topic. You go to college or university, do you get a job? Do you get paid more because you have a master's degree as opposed to a bachelor's degree? There's some examples of criterion. And the 2 major issues there are concurrent and predictive. And again, for the issues about self-regulation here, what about concurrent? Are we conceptualizing those notions of concurrent in multimodal data? And how do we wrestle with that? And about predictive. Most of the things that we're predicting have to do with outcomes that are after the self-regulation has happened. What about in-stream activities? Could you be predicting the nature of self-regulation 5 minutes from now on the basis of what's happening now? Construct. Do 2 sets of data represent the same topic? So I'm particularly reminded about Roger's present. He has this table that's got colors of reds and greens and things for about 8 different channels of data. And I asked myself, if I looked at that table where he's describing the ways in which these multi-channel data are all interacting and so forth, what are they telling us about what's the topic? Are we focusing, we think we're focusing on, for instance, emotion when we look at the facial expression data, but is it potentially about another topic? What's the construct that's represented in those data? And consequential, which is one which I don't think we have in this area given enough or maybe even started to conceptualize very much. The absence of unintended or morally contrary results when an action is based on a datum or an aggregate property of data. And there are at least 2 opportunities to conceptualize this. One would be with respect to in ways in which we intervene to gather this data. So some of this data is gathered without much intervention. Eye gaze data would be an example. But other data, for instance, having people apply tags to reveal metacognitive standards they use in monitoring, that's a mild intervention. What about the degree to which our other interventions intrude on, for instance, ways that expertise work, the expertise reversal phenomenon? Or just take more time and make the studying activity take longer, which robs people the opportunity to do other more preferable things than study accounting or whatever that might be. Or what about the uses of these data? For instance, if we know that I've been trying to popularize this notion that not all self-regulation is productive. The classic example of that are the handicappers. Are there possible implications of what we do that, for instance, would lead to demotivation of a student as a consequence of them coming to better understand the character of their regulation? So here are some lenses that you might consider in looking at these kinds of posters. I also tried to introduce a couple of other dimensions that we might be thinking about. So across the top of the table, you see construct, the capturing method, the format of the data that we gather, the scaling of that data, the lifespan of the datum, an error bar on that datum, and something about its reliability. I'd be happy to engage in a lot of correction of what I put in this table. But for instance, let's take the first one, logging in. This is something that a lot of people are capturing through the learning management system that's used. What construct does that represent? The format is a time. The scale is in seconds or even something more precise than that. Lifespan is instant. It's just now. Error bar, trivial. I wrote 100th, depending on various characteristics of the technologies that are worked with. And its reliability is perfect. You've never had ghost logins. Let's jump down, for instance, to decision, about fifth row, light blue. The construct we want to investigate here is making a choice. So what do we get? We get a button click, or you can think of other things. For instance, moving to another web page at some point before you think the person's done with the one you're currently looking at. It's a binary format. Up to button click, it depends on labels. So for instance, with respect to issues of validity, does the label matter? It's a point, lifespan, no error whatsoever, so perfect reliability. Given the reliability estimates that I put in that column, you'd say, wow, we're primed to have really strong opportunities to draw valid inferences about what? The decision? Okay, so if the decision is what's being reflected here, how much does the label that that button provides tell us or constrain us or liberate us in conceptualizing, for instance, content validity? And what would be the conceptualizations of decision if the button were labeled something differently? What content are we talking about? So just some thoughts about ways in which you might want to test what the poster presenters are providing for you by way of their claims about having data upon which one could make inferences and then contextualize or quantify the character of the validity that might follow on those inferences. Have fun.